Okay, here goes. The best way to start off this video is by telling you a little story. So, there's this new comic coming out called Gotham City Sirens Unfit for Orbit. And even though I've taken a pretty extended break from paying attention to Harley Quinn content, I went over and previewed this thing a couple weeks ago as I was able to get a preview of the comic. And why did I do this? I don't know. I've given up on Harley Quinn. I don't pay attention like I used to. But then again, I look up this character every once in a while, and sometimes I check in on what's happening. And hey, I've always liked Gotham City Sirens as a concept, and Harley was in a suit that was similar to the Jester suit on the cover, which I'm a sucker for. So I go up in and I look up this comic, and it starts off innocent enough with Harley Quinn and Selina Kyle fighting some folks, getting into some stuff, and okay, I'm skimming through it all good. And then we get this scene in which Harley Quinn calls her girlfriend Poison Ivy, to which she says, "Hey you, hiya babe, what you doing?" To which Poison Ivy responds, "Janet." And then we cut to a scene of her atop said Janet with her shirt up and her pants down. And obviously this is a non-explicit scene visually, but you get the idea. She's doing Janet. Ivy gets a call from her girlfriend and announces that she's having sex with another girl. Harley's response to this is, "Hi, Janet." She says hi back, says Ivy. They talk about the latest mission for a little bit, and then Harley and Ivy finish up their conversation with Harley saying, "Oh hey, can I video call in a bit to watch you and Janet bumping beauties?" "Maybe." Click. Woman, am I right? This comic was published officially by DC Comics in their main line of comics with their three icons, Catwoman, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy. And before you think I'm reading to you a Black Label book or something, it's marked ages 13 and up. Yes, so my thought reading this is Harley Quinn P. Diddy now, wants to watch her girlfriend having sex with someone else in front of her? I don't know. But DC Comics Editorial thought that was okay to write in the 13 and up book, put it in the book, publish it for the world to see. Now, maybe if this is the first time you've heard of this, it might make you surprised. But if you've been following this channel, it shouldn't surprise you at all. Because as I have extensively covered on this channel, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy are very, very prone to this kind of content. Very prone to it. In fact, I did an entire video, just me rambling and ranting about exactly what they've gone through. But you'll recall earlier this year, I reviewed the Harley Quinn Fart Fetish comic that they published and released. And despite the fact that the writer of that comic vehemently denied that it was a fetish book, the comic came out and it was plain to see from everyone that it was a fetish book. It centered around the letters that weren't supposed to be published from James Joyce that he wrote to his wife, the sexually explicit letters about how he loved smelling her farts and they turned him on for sex. Like, that was the entire book, linking the smell of farts to romance and sex. And it was linked to the opening scenes of that book of Harley really wanting to smell Ivy's farts and wanting her to fart for her because she loved the way it smelled. So that was that book. I've also covered another point of this is a couple years ago, they were doing the Harley Quinn 30th or 35th, I think it was the 30th anniversary, and they're opening a comic that they started to release. And this is all 13 and up content, by the way. That's all that it's rated. But the opening one was by Stepan Sejic, who has worked on Harley comics before, but he got away with this comic that was not rated Black Label or anything, that was exploring this BDSM with the characters of Harley and Ivy, and the idea that Harley's attachment to the Joker was based on her having a submission fetish, and that Ivy needed to enact that on Harley herself in order to entice Harley to her side. And he got Selina Kyle as this guy's insert explaining to her the dynamics of this kind of fetish. By the way, Stepan Sejic, for a living, apart from DC Comics, he makes porn books. That is what he does for a living, and DC thought that would be okay to publish. So It's actually nothing new for these characters to be involved with this kind of content. Does not mean that I have to like it, though. Remember when Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy were characters who would regularly appear on kids' cartoons, action figures, and the like? In fact, they still make merchandise for kids of Harley Quinn, and once again, these books are rated 13 and up. Now, sometimes I just feel so beat down by this stuff, I don't know what to say, but to my surprise, and I'm glad about this, I actually did see the very few people who were reading this comic call it out. The very first review of this comic on League of Comic Geek is criticizing this scene of the three-way fantasy between Harley and Ivy, and in fact, the only talk that I've seen around this book are people either criticizing this scene or saying that they don't know how they feel about it. Now, let's go into the writers who presented us with this scene and thought that it was okay, because you have to know, it's not just a writer's problem. In fact, it's more of an editorial problem, as this kind of stuff has been brought into these kinds of comics by more than one person. But the writer of this book is Leah Williams, who actually has a bit of a history in DC and Marvel of being criticized for just using the books to insert her own fetishes into them. The associate editor was Jessica Burby, another editor was Ariana Totoro, group editor Rob Levin, and editor-in-chief Marie Javins, which I want to point out that some of these editors were people who worked and approved of the Harley Quinn fart fetish book. So as you can see, this is not just the writers doing something. And guys, I've read comics, decades worth of comics, and I am very well aware that there have been writers in the past with fetishes who have tried to push them into comics, and some stuff has gotten through. But it used to be that generally you would have editors behind the scenes at DC and Marvel that would nip this stuff. It wouldn't let it go so far or so frequent. But this stuff with Harley and Ivy, it's pretty frequent. It's like, even as I stopped reading it because that whole Ivy is in like a three-way thing with Harley and Janet. It came out of nowhere, them reintroducing this idea that Harley and Ivy were in an open relationship, which there's a whole history behind that. I don't really want to get into it here, but essentially, it's not something that's supposed to be a part of the characters. It was invented because Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner were trying to get around the fact that DC didn't want them to be in an official relationship. It went away as soon as that stigma and they went away, and they had Harley and Ivy just as, you know, a monogamous relationship up to this point, but now they're swinging it back around to this idea that the characters are in this open relationship and they have no problem with each other watching them do other people or something like that, which is not a part what these characters were ever supposed to be like. By the way, I just like it when Poison Ivy doesn't have a love interest because I think that her love is for nature and not any of this other stuff. The problem that has happened here is writers coming in. You used to only get this stuff reading like fan fiction online. People would take these characters that they liked and use them to essentially live out their fantasies or insert their fantasies. And if you're like, well, it's just one part of the comic, well, what are you upset about? I don't care. As soon as I saw that, I stopped reading. I don't want to give any more attention to this series. This is what's made it impossible for me to enjoy these characters anymore. But like I'm pointing out with like primarily Harley and Ivy comics right now, but it's just kind of a vibe that I got from DC when I was reviewing comics. Remember the Joker is Pregnant comic? Now, I actually caused a bit of a stir of it because I was just like, what am I reading when I reviewed that comic? And the writer to the point came out and said that he just intended it to be a joke. Fair enough. But when I was reading that comic, I'm like, this looks like men pregnant fetish art. That's what it looks like. I had no other words to describe what I was reading with these comics. And so that's how I quickly learned the word fetish and to describe what I was seeing from DC Comics specifically. Now, you'll notice that I am talking primarily about DC Comics here. Well, people might be saying, well, what about Marvel Comics? Well, I actually think that Marvel Comics has pulled back on some of this content a bit. Now, if you know something I don't, please correct me in the comments below. But some of this was seeping into Marvel as well. Like during the Krakoa era, there was trying, like some people behind the scenes seemed like they were trying to push implications that Scott, Jean, and Logan were in a three-way relationship. Most notably, on the cover of one of their Pride issues, there was a little, squint your eyes and you'll see it, image of what appeared to be Jean, Scott, and Wolverine by the hot tub. And people were saying that this meant that they were in a three-way relationship and that someone behind the scenes was pushing that. But currently, from the Ashes era, Tom Brevoort came out and said, hey, what? Three-way relationship? What are you talking about? And just nix that. And he should have, because there's no precedent for these characters to be in that kind of relationship. What it is, though, is that there's this idea amongst shipping communities that if characters are in a love triangle, then the answer should be they all get into a relationship. Like, remember that Riverdale show that came out some years ago? The answer to the Archie, Betty, Veronica, and Jughead quad triangle was that they all get in a relationship at the end. But this stuff used to only be, like, sort of contained into fandom, fanfiction, fantasies. And you would only see this on, like, certain, like, pornographic fanfiction websites or stuff. But now it's seeped its way into comics. And the writers are just allowed to run rampant with their fantasies because the editors seem to just not have a problem with it, if it isn't the editors who are pushing this kind of stuff. But here's the thing, and the reason why I just praise Marvel Comics a little bit more is I do think that they've pulled back on this stuff a bit. And guys, no, I do not consider, they're doing the Marvel Rivals swimsuit editions. I don't consider pinup art or stuff like that comic. I've seen the preview, just seems very satirical. I don't consider that fetish content. Harley wanting to watch her girlfriend have sex with another woman in front of her, that is fetish content. Now, Marvel, I think that they have pulled back on allowing their characters and their icons to go this far and to just become, the vehicles for the writers to enact out all their fantasies through. And I think that the reason why that is because they've got Daddy Disney yanking on their chain a bit, because as, certain rights dealings that were going on with the X-Men, as certain rights expired, and now Disney fully has them, they want to market these characters. I'm already seeing a lot more X-Men content after they were put in jail for a long time. They're going to be appearing in Doomsday, video games, cartoons. So Marvel, I think, has more of a leash on what their characters are allowed to be seen in comics. And so I think that is why they pulled back on some of that stuff and are not allowing them to go that far. But DC, and this is an old saying, DC seems to stand for don't care. They just don't seem to care. Now, I don't think that they would ever allow this to happen with Batman because he is their golden goose. But with Harley and Ivy, it's like ever since the Birds of Prey movie flopped, and there was a period of time where even if the comics weren't good, Harley really was becoming less sexualized finally and not dipping into these areas so much. But it seems like ever since the Birds of Prey movie bombed, there's been just this gradual dip back into this stuff, and I gradually started to see more and more of it, and it's just like DC doesn't care, and this just seems like this is what they're fine with, and it just seems like these are their fantasies that the writers can live through these characters. And over in the Poison Ivy book, it's like, why is Poison Ivy in a relationship with Harley and also in a casual sexual relationship with her sidekick in a three-way thing where her sidekick is also hooked up with Harley? It's like, this is the stuff that I quit reading DC Comics for, because I'm going to tell you all a secret. I didn't get into either DC or Marvel Comics to read the writers enact their fetishes out in front of me or enact their fantasies out in front of me with these characters. Like, this gets people mad at me, but listen, because here's the problem. When you criticize fetishization in comics, then people take it personally. Maybe because there's some people out there who have these fetishes, and so when they hear someone criticizing them in books, they internalize it to be about them. But listen, I don't care about you. I don't care about what you're doing in your personal life. I don't care about your personal thoughts. I don't care about any of that. The only reason why I make these videos at all is to say that these characters should not be used like this. If you want the success that they want with Superman and to get this universe up again and mainstream and everyone loving it, then what have you done to earn that success if this is how you are treating some of your icons? And this is the kind of material in a 13 and up book that you think is okay to publish, and these ideas that you think is okay to publish in stuff that is marked age appropriate for kids. There's a reason why Editorial would not want to go with the Scott, Jean, and Logan triangle thing. It not just because it's not what most people want to read, but it's not who the characters are. These are not who the characters are supposed to be about. That's not what they're supposed to be about. And what they've done at DC Comics with these editors is they've hijacked certain characters and made it so that it's only for them. They're essentially making content for them and no one else. And the reason why I say that is I would like you to look at the sales of Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Now, the Poison Ivy book by G. Willow Wilson, which I reviewed, actually started out really good, I thought. And I thought that it was one of the better books being released from DC when it first started coming out and had some great art. And because of that, it was originally just supposed to be a 6-issue miniseries. It went up to a maxi series and became an ongoing. But lately, it's dipped down in the sales and has recently, if you look up Comic Book Revolution, which gets their information from ICB2, then it's dipped down so it's not selling in the top 100 anymore. This book is on the downturn because people are leaving it and not wanting to read it. But that's one thing. Poison Ivy is not doing well at all anymore. But Harley Quinn? Let's look at where she is on the chart this last month. Oh, wait, I can't find her. Oh, wait. Oh, you know why I can't find Harley Quinn on the charts? Because she sold so little, she didn't even make the top 200 ranked. Look, Comic Book Revolution lists it. She sold so little that she didn't even make the charts. She is unranked, and they disparage them for how low Harley's been selling. And the truth is, Harley hasn't been selling anything in her solo book for years. They started this solo book back in 2021 and they've had 3 writers. And if you track the sales, it's all been abysmally low for what this character should be. Just abysmal. And this last couple of years, the multiple times she has not even been able to make the top 200 charts, which means like, well, if you compare it to other sales, that means that she doesn't even sell 10,000 issues. Nobody is buying Harley Quinn anymore. No one went to see that Birds of Prey movie. I guarantee no one watched season 5 of that show. You know why? No one talked about it. No one reads about these characters anymore. And like, that's your fate. Because listen, it doesn't matter what I say here. And it doesn't matter what other people say to criticize this. Like, everyone spoke out against that fart fetish comic, but DC Comics didn't do anything. They didn't react. They promoted it, they put it out, and they continue to release content like this, even if it doesn't sell. So it doesn't matter what you and me say. It's not going to stop them. But it is just a sort of a disparagement against them because, like, you can publish this all you want, but no one's reading it. I'm just obsessive, and that's why I look over and see what they've done to Harley Quinn lately. But no one is reading this. This is what happens when you don't take care of your icons and you allow these people to just run rampant with them and you lose their identity. It still shocks me to this day. I look at this and I'm like, how did Harley Quinn become this? But so, you know, it's a diss against you because Superman is not tracking to do that well at the box office. And we'll see how the movie actually turns out this week. But it's like, once again, you guys want all this success, but then this is what you allow. Why didn't James Gunn, instead of working on getting himself a cover, ever come down and be like, we are not using these characters like this because we might want to use them in a movie one day and we're not going to have this kind of content out for them because we have a brand to protect. James Gunn probably likes this kind of content, so there you go with that. But yeah, if you're thinking about getting back into DC Comics, I would recommend no. Marvel Comics, they still have a whole lot of problems with editorial and not very many good comics, but I actually would praise Marvel Comics over DC at this point because of stuff like this. But yeah, it's really a knock against DC, and it's like, if you want this to be so how some of your icons end as characters, appealing to no one but the fantasies of these writers and editors who work here for some reason, then be my guest. It's more of a knock against you. I will always have the Harley Quinn of old, the classic Harley Quinn that I love and that I have a shrine to in the background. You know, it's more of a knock against you that you had to destroy these characters with your own dirty thoughts. But I'm just going to keep on with my own Harley Quinn, and this video will probably get more views than one of these comics will ever sell in its life. So thank you all for watching, and thank you all for listening to the grossness that DC Comics has become. What do you think of all of this? Do you think that I am going too far, or do you think that this is just as gross as I think it is? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.